Struggling to find a movie to watch this Halloween? Well, these are my top 7 horror movies to watch in 2023. Let's get into it. So the reason I picked these movies isn't necessarily they're my top 7 horror movies of all time, but I think they all scratch a little bit of a different itch that no matter what your mood is or what you're looking for, you're going to find something you enjoy. Be it 80s slasher, something cheesy, something comedic, something with a lot of action, we have it all. So with that, let's get into the first one. Our first movie will be It Follows. I picked it because it's a super original horror film that's more in line with modern standards if that's what you're looking for, and I find the concept to be super terrifying and it's executed to perfection. It's directed by David Robert Mitchell, and the story revolves around a young woman named Jay who becomes the target of a supernatural curse after a seemingly innocent sexual encounter. She quickly learns about a malevolent entity that's visible only to those who are cursed, and the curse can be passed along to others through sexual contact. Jay has to decide whether to run from the monster forever or doom somebody else to death. I think one of the most terrifying parts of the monster in this film is it will chase you forever, but it will only get to you by walking to you, so you can run away for short periods of safety, but you have no idea how long it'll take to reach you, which leads to this unique feeling of paranoia. It's a super fun horror film and I highly recommend a watch. Another newer film, Malignant, it's directed by James Wan, who you may know as the director of Saw. The story follows Madison, a woman being plagued by violent visions of gruesome murders, and as she begins to look into the cause of these visions, along with her sister Sydney, they begin to unravel a dark secret from her past. Without giving things away, Madison discovers that her connection to the murders is deeply intertwined with an evil force that's haunted her since childhood. And the reason I put this movie on my list is because it sort of scratched an itch for a type of film I never knew I wanted. And again, I don't want to give anything away, but there are some shockingly good action scenes in the second half of this movie that I would have never seen coming from just watching the first act. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Next up on my list is the Damien Leone directed Terrifier 2, and you may want to skip this next one if you haven't seen the first one and intend to, as there might be some mild spoilers. Terrifier 2 picks up immediately after the first film, in which Art is killed and taken to a coroner's office, where he's mysteriously resurrected and gives us a nice gruesome introduction like we'd expect. The story then picks back up a year later and we're led by Sienna, who's preparing for an epic Halloween night out with her friend Brooke, and the film follows Sienna and her brother Jonathan as they struggle to survive Halloween night and battle it out with Art. And fuck, this movie's awesome. I really wasn't a fan of the first Terrifier film, as I generally don't like gorefests, especially with very limited plot, but the Terrifier 2 honestly improves on the first film in almost every way. A higher budget, way better kills, there's even an interesting story, and while it doesn't always make sense, it was plenty to keep me invested for the almost 2.5 hour runtime. If you're a fan of balls to the wall gorefests, inventive kills, and some very dark humor, this one's definitely for you. The final modern horror movie I'll be talking about is Drag Me to Hell. It's a supernatural horror film directed by Sam Raimi, and I know everyone and their dog has seen Evil Dead and Army of Darkness. I mean, Sam Raimi is a horror legend. This movie, however, slipped past a lot of people's radars, yet it still very much has that Sam Raimi weirdness we all love. The story follows Christine, a loan officer working at a bank. In an attempt to impress her boss and secure a promotion, she makes the tough decision to deny an old gypsy woman an extension on her mortgage, which results in the woman's eviction. In retaliation, Miss Ganoush places a powerful curse on Christine, which summons a vengeful spirit known as the Lamia. The spirit torments Christine with a series of terrifying and increasingly horrific supernatural attacks, and realizing she's doomed to be dragged to hell by the Lamia, Christine seeks the help of a psychic and a seance to rid herself of the curse. This movie is super fun. It's a perfect blend of horror and dark comedy, and we really get to see Christine battle both the supernatural and her own morality. I definitely recommend giving it a watch. Idle Hands is a yearly watch for me. It's a horror comedy film directed by Rodman Flender, and while it has a few decent kills, it definitely leans a lot heavier on the comedy side. Plus we get peak Jessica Alba, and goddamn. The story revolves around Anton, a slacker and stoner who lives an aimless life, regularly smoking weed out of his inhaler. Then leading up to Halloween night, Anton's right hand becomes possessed by an evil force and goes on a killing spree, murdering his parents and his best friends without his control. Terrified and desperate to stop his possessed hand, Anton enlists the help of his friends Mick and Peanut, played by Seth Green and Eldon Henson, whom have for some reason returned from the dead after he kills them, and they discover that the possession is part of a demonic curse, and Anton's hand is determined to carry out a ritual that will bring forth a powerful demon into the world. Idle Hands displays some truly hilarious moments as Anton battles his own possessed appendage, and it's a unique and entertaining take on the classic horror trope of demonic possession. Go check it out. Night of the Creeps is a horror comedy directed by Fred Decker, and it's a cult classic, like a if you know, you know type beat. The story is a fun and campy homage to science fiction and horror films in the 1950s, and the film begins in 1959 when an alien experiment escapes from a spacecraft that crash landed on Earth. The experiment is a parasitic organism that infects its hosts and turns them into these zombie-like creatures. And then we cut to the 1980s where we meet two college students, Chris and JC, who inadvertently wake up the dormant alien experiment when they release a cryogenically frozen dead body from the university laboratory. As the parasitic creatures begin to spread, Chris and JC, along with a determined detective played by Scott Adkins, who has some really good one-liners, they have to band together to stop the alien infestation. Night of the Creeps really paved the way with its blend of horror and comedy, paying tribute to B-movies of the past while delivering a unique and entertaining take on the genre. The film is full of quirky characters, witty one-liners, and memorable moments that make it a beloved cult classic among horror fans. And last, but definitely not least, my favorite horror movie of all time, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. It's a horror comedy directed by Tobe Hooper, the same director of the first film, and it serves as a direct sequel to the original 1974 film. The best part of this film is the complete change in tone from the original film, and from what I've read in interviews, it really seems the more comedic tone of the second film is the intention for the original as well. The story takes place several years after the brutal events of the first film, and a radio DJ named Stretch is working for a small-time radio station in Texas, and inadvertently records a call from a frantic and terrified young woman just before she's brutally murdered. Intrigued by the call, Stretch decides to investigate further, leading her to cross paths with the infamous cannibalistic Sawyer family, including the chainsaw-wielding Leatherface and his sadistic brother Chop Top, who's honestly the best character in the whole fucking series. Stretch's pursuit of the killer draws the attention of Lieutenant Lefty Enright, played by Dennis Hopper, a former Texas Ranger whose niece was among the victims of the first film. Lefty's determined to exact revenge on the Sawyer family and bring them to justice. As Stretch dives deeper into the gruesome world of the Sawyers, she finds herself in a battle for survival against the deranged family and their horrifying torture methods. The film combines elements of horror and dark comedy perfectly, with moments of extreme gore and suspense. It also ends with a super memorable showdown between Stretch and Leatherface in the Sawyer family's underground lair. If I had to recommend just one from this list, this would be the one. And those are the 7 horror movies I recommend you watch this Halloween. I appreciate you making it to the end. Please comment your favorite horror movies so I can check them out, and I'll make more lists like this soon. I have some other videos that I'll link right here, but other than that, you guys have a happy Halloween, and bye.